Hello and welcome back to the Tik-A method. In week 24, I introduced eighth note triplets in a simple time signature and the idea of borrowed division. So if you haven't checked out week 24's video, it's really important that you watch that one first before proceeding here, because for week 25, I'm just taking it to the next level. We're going to talk about quarter note triplets in a simple time signature. So in week 24, we talked about the 3-to-1 ratio. Here in week 25, I'm going to be talking about the 3-to-2 ratio. For example, quarter note triplets in common time, half note triplets in cut time, so forth and so on. So we're going to talk about that 3-to-2 ratio here in week 25. We're going to do a couple exercises together. I hope you'll stick around for the whole video because I'm going to get started right now. Okay, here we are on the first page of week 25. And just to bang this out right away, triplet is the Tik-A verbiage for triplets. Whether you have eighth note triplets, quarter note triplets, half note triplets, if they are triplets, it will be triplet for each of those notes. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that we're really clear. The Tik-A verbiage is very, very logical and straightforward. Let's now talk about the math behind the 3-to-2 ratio triplet. Quarter note triplets, most often notated with a 3 and a straight bracket over the quarter notes, is derived directly from eighth note triplets. And eighth note triplets are derived from a compound time signature. They're borrowed from a compound time signature. And the alignment of those quarter note triplets directly relates to the placement of the eighth note triplets. And I'll show you what I mean in these three illustrations below. In example 1, this one right here at the top, it's showing us the 3-to-2 ratio. In other words, 3 quarter note triplets fit into 2 beats in common time in this case. So when we have 3 quarter note triplets entering on beat 1, it will take up all of beats 1 and 2. When we have 3 quarter note triplets entering on beat 3, it will take up all of beats 3 and 4. Now, can quarter note triplets enter on beat 2 and break the invisible bar line? Absolutely. But since I'm just introducing quarter note triplets in this week, all of our quarter note triplets are either going to fall on beat 1 and take up beats 1 and 2, or fall on beat 3 and take up all of beats 3 and 4, and most of our exercises are going to be in common time for week 25. Now, example number 2 is really starting to get into the math and the proper placement of our quarter note triplets. But first, let's take a step back. Let's recall quarter notes in common time. Very simple, right? No pun intended. Quarter notes in common time get 1 beat. They're broken down into 2 equal eighth notes. Now, fast forward to today with quarter note triplets. Quarter note triplets are broken down the same exact way. 1 quarter note triplet is equally divided into 2 eighth note triplets. And that's what this example is showing. That's why it's so important that we think about our eighth note triplets when properly placing our quarter note triplets. Let me show you what I mean. And in example number 2, we can plainly see that quarter note triplet being broken down into 2 eighth note triplets. Let me box each one of these quarter note triplets with its accompanying eighth note triplets to show you what I mean. So if I take this first quarter note triplet and I put a box around it, I'm going to include these 2 eighth note triplets. Moving on to the second quarter note triplet, I'm going to include these 2 eighth note triplets, and then the third quarter note will include the last 2 eighth note triplets. So you can see how each one of those quarter note triplets is broken down into 2 eighth note triplets. This proper placement is what most beginning musicians fail to understand, which is why they struggle performing quarter note triplets accurately. And finally, in example number 3 here at the bottom, this is exactly how musicians should be thinking about and performing quarter note triplets. It's all about that eighth note triplet subdivision. Let me show you what I mean. If I have a full measure of eighth note triplets in common time, here's what it sounds like. 1, 2, ready, and triplet, 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 triplet. All right, now if I observe the ties that I've notated here in the third example, I'll end up placing my quarter note triplets exactly where they go. Let me show you what I mean. 1, 2, 3, 4. Trillet, paw, That's where quarter note triplets are placed. Now, if I use the correct verbiage, triplet, triplet, that is the 3-to-2 ratio quarter note triplets in common time that I'm referring to in this week. And again, in example number 3, if I was to put a box around each of the tied eighth note triplets, that would represent a quarter note triplet. Let me do it here. So I'll put a box around these first 2 tied eighth note triplets, then around the next 2 tied eighth note triplets, and then around the final 2 tied eighth note triplets. Those each represent a quarter note triplet. So you can see that the quarter note triplet is broken down into 2 eighth note triplets very, very clearly here. And at the very bottom of the page here, I'm talking about half note triplets in cut time. That is still a 3-to-2 ratio. Let's think about it for a moment. 2-2 or cut time means 2 beats in the measure and the half note gets the beat. So half note triplets would take up an entire measure. We're fitting 3 half note triplets into 2 beats in cut time. Each of those half note triplets is broken down into 2 equal quarter note triplets in this case. And as I state here, half note triplets take up an entire measure in cut time, and they do break the invisible bar line. And although there are examples in cut time here in week 25, we're actually not going to be doing any of those exercises in this video. That's another reason why it's so important that you go out and get my book so that you can do all of the exercises in all of the weeks. These videos are just supplemental resources to all the information, illustrations, pro tips, and exercises in my book. And with that said, you know what time it is. We need to now take what we've learned and put it into practice. Let's go to our first exercise. Our first exercise for today is exercise 25A. You can see it's at the bottom of the page here. The Tik-A verbiage is included, but I also wanted to show you that for each one of my weeks, I have instructions and suggestions for all of the exercises in my book that you can follow. I also have pro tips, and on this page, the pro tip is talking about the common mistakes that students make when trying to perform and subdivide quarter note triplets. So the pitfalls here are to the right on the page. The way we should be thinking about it is on the left. I'm not going to go over this here in this video, but this is just yet another example of why you should go out and get my book, because there's so much more information in my book that I actually don't go over in these videos. All right, let's get to the analysis now of exercise 25A. On beat 1 and measure 1, we've got a quarter note followed by another quarter note for an easy placement of that invisible bar line. On beat 3 and on beat 4, we have 3 eighth note triplets. And this is really crucial for the success of the first 2 beats of measure 2. Why? Because we have our first sighting of quarter note triplets in measure 2 on beat 1 that take up all of beat 1 and 2, that 3-to-2 ratio. And remember what we said, quarter note triplets are subdivided into eighth note triplets. So by performing 2 full beats of eighth note triplets on beat 3 and 4 of measure 1, going into measure 2, we can now really be thinking about that subdivision and place those quarter note triplets correctly, properly. Okay, those quarter note triplets are followed by an invisible bar line because we know they take up all of beats 1 and 2. Beat 3 is this quarter note, beat 4 is this quarter rest. In measure 3, we're back to some simple time signature breakdowns here, subdivisions. We've got T, T, Ta on beat 1 and 2, invisible bar line, back to triplets on beat 3, and then a quarter note on beat 4. In measure 4, we've got a quarter rest, followed by a quarter note, followed by an invisible bar line, and then beats 3 and 4 will be those quarter note triplets. And while we're saying those quarter note triplets, hopefully we can be looking ahead at that next measure. And in measure 5, we've got a half note taking up beats 1 and 2, invisible bar line. We've got quarter note triplets here taking up beats 3 and 4 in measure 5. Moving on to measure 6, we have triplet, invisible bar line, and then beats 3 and 4 will be those quarter note triplets. Again, in measure 6, it's really nice. We have 2 full beats of eighth note triplets, so we're really getting that subdivision happening so we can place the quarter note triplets that come in on beat 3 and 4 properly. Going on to measure 7, we've got Ta on beat 1, a quarter rest on beat 2, invisible bar line right here, followed by 3 eighth note triplets on beat 3 and a quarter rest on beat 4. Last measure, triplet, invisible bar line, ta on beats 3 and 4. I would tell my students to write -1 here, so we hold that half note out full value. Okay, we have very efficiently analyzed exercise 25A. It is now time to go throw a metronome on, find a pitch to vocalize this exercise on, and see if we can get it. Here we go. Okay, the first thing I want to do is remove all of the ink from this page so we can see the exercise a little more clearly. We already have all of the TikATeeMethod verbiage included, and we've analyzed it thoroughly. I'm using the metronome again from drummers-pulse.com. So thank you again to the folks at that website for offering up a cool online metronome. And as I mentioned in last week's video, it's got some really cool subdivision options here. You can subdivide each beat into 1/8 notes, into 16th notes, and relevant for this week and last week's video, into triplets. Let me demonstrate. I'm just going to press start here on the metronome. I'm at 74 beats per minute, or the quarter note equals 74. And as you can hear, I've got each of those beats subdivided into 3 equal parts, or triplets in our case here. And this is the fader here. I'll just turn it down. There's the quarter notes. Turn it back up. And there's the triplets. Now, you may want to utilize this when performing this exercise, since the majority of the rhythms in this exercise are triplets. However, for today, and as I'm going to perform it, I'm actually just going to use the quarter note, so I'm going to turn that fader all the way down. But I thought that was a cool feature that I wanted to show you guys, especially for a free online metronome. Really nice. I'm going to be performing this on a G3. You're welcome to join me on this note, an octave lower, an octave higher, or a different note altogether, but the idea is that you vocalize this rhythm with me. And again, we're at 74 beats per minute, or the quarter note equals 74. I'll give us a 1 measure count off. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and ta, ta, triplet, 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 ta, ti, ta, triplet, ta, ta, triplet, ta, triplet, 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 ta, triplet, triplet, ta. All right, let's stop the metronome. Okay, now that we've finished performing this exercise on a pitch and with a metronome, it's a really important step to go to my website, find the MP3 quote-unquote answer for exercise 25A to see if we made any mistakes. So let's go do that together right now. Okay, here we are at my website where you can find all 363 of the MP3s that accompany my book. Now, once you've performed an exercise with a metronome and on a pitch, and now you've come to my website, you've found the MP3, you have one of 3 options. Option number 1 is just to listen to that MP3 and check for your accuracy that way. Option number 2 is to vocalize along with the MP3. And option number 3, especially if your primary instrument isn't the voice, it's time to break out your instrument and perform along with the MP3. Okay, so I'm all queued up here for exercise 25A. Pick option 1, option 2, or option 3 because I'm going to press play right now. One, 2, 3, 4. Ta, ta, triplet, 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 ta, ti, ta, triplet, ta, ta, triplet, ta, triplet, 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 ta, triplet, triplet, ta. All right, there you have it, exercise 25A. So if you did not yet choose option number 3, which is performing this exercise on your instrument, please do that before proceeding. One, 2, 3, 4. All right, let's move on to the next exercise for this video. I've chosen exercise 25D. So let's analyze here. We've got a quarter note on beat 1. We've got a quarter rest on beat 2, followed by an invisible bar line. On beat 3 enters a group of quarter note triplets, taking up all of beats 3 and 4. Measure 2, quarter note, quarter rest, invisible bar line, quarter rest, TT on beat 4. So a nice simple measure for measure 2. Measure 3, we've got quarter note triplets taking up beats 1 and 2, invisible bar line, followed by 2 full beats of eighth note triplets. Then in measure 4, we've got our week 6 rhythmic motif, that dotted quarter note to the flagged eighth note, taking up all of beat 1 and 2. Invisible bar line, and then beats 3 and 4 is that half note. And of course, we've got this little reminder to be looking ahead at that next measure while we're performing that half note. And in measure 5, or that first measure on the second line, we've got a quarter rest on beat 1, eighth note triplets on beat 2. Here's our invisible bar line. It's going to squeeze right in here. Then we've got quarter note triplets entering on beat 3, which will take up all of beat 3 to 4. There's that 3 to 2 ratio. Measure 6, we've got a quarter note followed by 2 eighth notes, invisible bar line. Then we've got some 16th notes here on beat 3, Tik-A. Then on beat 4, to Triplets. So we're moving from that simple TT Tik-A to Triplets, that borrowed division from our compound time signatures. Okay, then in measure 7, we've got Triplet, Ta on beat 2, invisible bar line. Beat 3 is this quarter rest. Beat 4 is the eighth rest with a flagged eighth note on the upbeat of 4 right here. Then on beat 1 of measure 8, a half note, invisible bar line, and we finish it off on beats 3 and 4 with 3 quarter note triplets. Okay, we've analyzed this exercise very efficiently again. Let's go throw a metronome on, find a pitch, and perform it. Okay, like I did last time here, let's clear the ink so we can see the exercise a little more clearly. I'm going to stay at 74 beats per minute, or the quarter note equals 74 for our case here in common time, and I'm not going to take advantage of that triplet subdivision on this metronome. All right, let's get the metronome started here. And here's our pitch. This is what I'll be singing the exercise on, a G3. I hope you'll join me. I'm going to give us a 1 measure count off. Here we go. 1, 2, ready and ta. Triplet ta. TT triplet, triplet, triplet ta. T ta. Triplet, triplet ta. TT Tik-A, triplet, triplet ta. T-ta, triplet. All right, let's stop that metronome. Okay, so some really fun rhythms in here. That 6th measure when you're doing the T-T, Tik-A, then having to go right to that compound borrowed division to the triplets, that's a lot of fun. Okay, you know what we need to do now. We've performed this exercise with a metronome on a pitch. We've got to go to my website, find the MP3 for exercise 25D to see if we made any mistakes. Let's go do that together right now. All right, here we are back at my website. I've got exercise 25D all queued up here, and you know what your 3 options are, so go ahead and make a decision, because without further ado, I'm going to press play on the MP3 for exercise 25D right now.
One, 2, 3, 4.
Ta, triplet ta, TT triplet, triplet, triplet ta, T ta, triplet, triplet ta, TT Tik-A, triplet, triplet ta, T ta, triplet. All right, there it is. That's a fun exercise, exercise 25D. And you know the drill. If you have not yet chosen option number 3, which is performing exercise 25D on your instrument, you need to do that before proceeding.
One, 2, 3, 4.
All right, that does it for week 25. Thank you so much for joining me today when we talked about our 3-to-2 triplet ratio. Week 24, 3-to-1. Week 25, 3-to-2. So where do we go from here in week 26? In week 26, I introduce rests within eighth note triplets and rests within quarter note triplets. So now we can incorporate some silence within these subdivisions, which is a lot of fun. So I hope you'll join me for next week's video. In the meantime, I hope you'll check out my book, Rhythmic Sight Reading, The TikATeeMethod. It's available at my website, roncastingway.com. It's also available on Amazon and at jwpepper.com. And while you're on Amazon, don't forget to check out my store, Ron Castingway Music. A lot of great resources there for music professionals, educators, and students alike. And please help out the channel. Hit that like and subscribe button and that notification bell so you get the latest video. And if you're inspired to do so, leave a comment or a question below. I will reply to any and all comments. So until the next video, go out and practice your eighth note triplets, your quarter note triplets, even your half note triplets, because once we incorporate rests into all of those subdivisions, it makes for some really fun rhythms. Thanks again for allowing me to be a part of your rhythmic journey. I'll see you next time.